Hey everyone, it's Tom Crowder with another Rockstar Minute, and I want to share some of the context that has been helpful for us when looking at the real estate market, the Canadian economy, and the global economy. It's just helped us and our families make some financial decisions, and it's given some clarity to those decisions. Before we get started, I just wanted to share some quick stats. In Canada, the real estate market right now has a low of listings. There's very little inventory on the market. In fact, it's 60% less inventory or listings on the market compared to the year 2015. So although our population has grown a lot and Canada gets a lot of international immigration, and Toronto is the number one destination, our metropolitan area here is the number one destination for Canadian immigration, we have very little inventory. We'll see throughout the late summer and fall if that increases, but right now we're at about a 20-year low of inventory across the country of Canada and 60% less inventory or listings compared to the year 2015. So that naturally just puts pressure on the real estate market. And Canada is really ramping up the amount of immigration that we're getting in here. Actually, I believe July set a new record for permanent resident application approvals in this country, and that beat June, which was the previous monthly record. So Toronto is also one of the fastest growing cities in North America. In 2019, we were number one. The last year, we were number three behind Dallas and Phoenix. So we are in an absolutely fast growing metropolitan center. So we get a lot of immigration. There's not a lot of inventory. It just puts pressure on the real estate market. And then on top of that in Canada, because of everything that's been going on in the world, instead of the usual 600,000 employment insurance recipients that we have in this country, we currently have about 1.7 million. So we have a huge amount of government output, and I'm not arguing whether that's good or bad. I think we'd all prefer everybody to have the jobs they want and to be working, but we have employment insurance, but we have triple the amount of people receiving benefits right now than what we usually have over a 20 or 25-year historical standard of about 600,000 a year. It's 1.7 million. So there's all these kinds of things going on, and I think anyone who's listening to this, who's been working for 5, 10, or 15 years, you kind of just feel that it's hard to get ahead. It's hard to save money. It's hard to do things that you want to do. And reading the headlines in the media just don't give us enough context as to what is going on. So today I want to share some of the books that we've talked about. Some of these we've talked about in the past, but I really wanted to condense it down to these are the books that have been most helpful to us and we feel are giving us the best guidance for the next 5 and 10 years. So the first book is The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. This is an absolutely great book. Jeff Booth is a Canadian, lives out in British Columbia. And this particular book just does a fantastic job at explaining technology, artificial intelligence, what it's doing to the job market, and how our current systems aren't in tune with what's happening with technology and the implications of that going forward. So if you want some roadmap to where jobs are going to be, what's going to happen in the economy, this is absolutely the best book that we've found currently for that. So highly recommend it, The Price of Tomorrow. It's a pretty easy read. You'll get through that pretty quickly, and it'll just give you this amazing context. Whether you agree or disagree with Jeff, we happen to agree, but whether you agree or disagree, it just gives you some new context that you may have not considered. We had at least had not considered some of the things that Jeff had shared in that particular book. And then so there's that book, and the next book is the Bitcoin Standard. And before everybody gets all excited about Bitcoin, there's some people like us, we're big fans of Bitcoin. Other people absolutely detest Bitcoin. So whatever your take on it, let's put that aside for a second. Saifedean Ammous, in the first 4 chapters of this book, does an absolutely brilliant job of breaking down the history of money. So if you're trying to understand what's happening to money, why you can't save and get ahead, the first 4 chapters, the first 72 pages of this book are almost enough. The rest of the book is brilliant as well, but the first 72 pages of Saifedean's book here do an absolutely amazing job. And we've read a lot of books on the history of money. This is probably condensed it the best we've ever seen. So highly recommend this. So these 2 books together are, to us, going to give you a brilliant understanding of where we're headed. So this is our opinion, of course, but we would highly recommend these 2 books. If you wanted to go deeper, I have some other books for you, but if you're just going to stop there, these are the 2 books that are going to give you some really good context. So the next books are if you want to go deeper. So the first one, this book read like a mystery novel to me. This is the Creature from Jekyll Island. It's an absolute beast of a book. I loved it. I read this book in about, I think it was 2008 or 2009. This book is the behind the scenes of of how our current money system was created with the Federal Reserve in the US and the central banking system. So if you want to understand the central banking system and the way we operate with money today in the economy, this is a behind the scenes look. After I read this book, I felt like I just had a brilliant understanding of what is going on with the economy and money. This really gave me a lot of good context and helped me out a lot. So again, you don't have to go this deep. These two are enough, but if you want to go deeper, this is a great one. I felt like it was like a mystery novel I was reading. Some people read it and just think it's too much. So, whatever is your fancy on that particular book, but highly recommend that book. If you want something a little lighter, but also gives you a good understanding of how central banks and nations and countries are looking at their treasuries and how that impacts us as citizens in the country when we're working. This book is at least, I think, 10 years old. It's by James Rickards. It's called Currency Wars. And this basically condenses, I would say, what's in the Creature from Jekyll Island somewhat, and gives you a higher overview, but it's really, really good. So if you want to see how countries are battling between trade deficits, and if you've heard this language and you're trying to make sense of it, and how that applies to us working inside a country and what it does to our money and the value of our money in a country, this is a really, really good book. So that gives you good context if you want to go a little deeper. So those are two books that'll take you deeper on the topic of money and the economy and how the system itself works. The next two are a little different. The Sovereign Individual was written, I believe this one's written, I think these next two books are both written in 1997, but this particular book, The Sovereign Individual, it really does a great job of extrapolating out what's happening with the internet and the information age and the impact that that's going to have on individuals, countries, and cities. So this is really brilliant. I'm using brilliant a lot today. It's really brilliant. It's a brilliant book. The reason I say it's really good is that a lot of the things that they forecasted back in 1997 or whenever they wrote this book have come true almost exactly. So reading some of what they're saying is coming our way is really fascinating. So highly recommend this book. I actually read this book, I think around 2003 or 2004 or so. I knew I had read an important book. I put it down and didn't really know what to do with the information. And now I really wish I had kind of stuck with that a little bit sooner. I probably would have picked up or got into Bitcoin even before I did. So that is a great read, The Sovereign Individual. Highly recommend that for trends on what is happening with individuals over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And this book is also really good. The Fourth Turning. You're going to hear a lot of hedge fund managers, a lot of people in finance refer to this book. That you'll see things on Twitter where people will, kind of write, this is the fourth turning or fourth turning. A lot of it comes from this particular book. This was also written in the late 1990s. And what these guys did is they took several hundred years of history and discovered that there's some trends or some patterns. There's these 80-year cycles where we go through these different turning points, and they call them the first, second, third, and fourth turning. And the fourth turning is always the most turbulent. And they were discussing in this book how the fourth turning would hit right about now and what we can expect to go through in the economy. And then there's some goodness that ultimately should come from this, but the next few years are going to be rather turbulent. And they describe what they expect to be happening here. There's a few chapters at the end of the fourth turning specifically, and their advice on how to prepare during a time like the fourth turning throughout economic history. So if you want to go deeper, that's another great book to take you a little deeper. But again, if you don't want to go into all these particular books, the first two that I mentioned, Jeff Booth's book, The Price of Tomorrow, and the Bitcoin Standard, do an absolutely great job of, in our opinion, giving you enough context to understand what is happening with Canada. Why are we spending as much money as we are spending? What are the implications? What are the second and third and fourth order effects of spending all that money? How, as individuals and our families and our communities, can we prepare? What should we expect from the government, and how can we prepare ourselves to kind of circumvent some of the damage that they're doing with all the debt and deficit spending that they're doing? So these two books for sure, I highly recommend. That's it for today. Hopefully you find that useful. Until next time, your life, your terms.